Hi, I'm Larry Puckett, the DCC Guy. Today, as promised, we're going to take a look at the new Walthers DCC-friendly turnouts. They're readily available now. I had no problem at all getting two of these through my local dealer. So let's take a look at them and answer the question, did they improve them or are they still the same? Let's go ahead and get started. Before we get started with our look at the Walthers Turnouts, I wanted to show you that the helix is now completed. I had just enough track to finish it. I think I used 25 out of the 30 pieces I had originally estimated that would be required in order to build this helix. And the reason I was short on that was because I managed to cut out an entire loop after I did some calculations. And we'll talk about that in a future video, but for right now, it's done. The main thing that I have to do at this point is the block detection, get that installed, get the display built and ready to go so that we can watch a train go up the helix and follow its progress with LEDs on a display. So that'll be coming in 2 or 3 weeks, something like that. In the meantime, let's go ahead and take a look at those brand new Walthers Turnouts. Hit that little red subscribe button, and when the little bell comes up, click on it and click all. Thanks now. Okay, let's go ahead and get started with a look at the brand new Walthers Turnouts. For this, I'm going to focus down here on the workbench so that we can see them very clearly out of the package, of course. So let's go ahead and do that. Well, here you go, the brand new Walthers Turnout. You can see it comes shipped on this piece of cardboard with a nice clear plastic overlay. It has cutouts here to protect the ends of the rails at both ends and anything else that's sticking out. So seems to be a fairly good shipping solution for Walthers. Now let's go ahead and take a look at these. Now these are available in various configurations. This one here is a number 5 DCC friendly turnout. It's code 83. And these ties here, they're plastic. They seem to be a very dark brown. They're almost black looking, to be honest with you. Okay, so let's take a look at what Walthers has changed about these and what has stayed the same. Now on the left here, my left, your right I guess, is the new Walthers Turnout. And on this side here, the right side, okay, on my right, is one of the old number 5 Walthers Turnouts. So we can do a side-by-side comparison of what is different and what's the same. Now first off, if you look at these, you can see that the geometry is essentially the same. They're the same sizes. The main difference that you can notice right off here are these guardrails opposite the frogs. They're just a hair longer on the newer one than they were on the old one. The frog itself is still virtually identical to this older one here. Now another thing that they have also carried through on here is if you look on the bottom, they have these bonding jumpers here. So these jumpers connect the stock rail to the closure rails and the stock rail to the frog rails. And that means that as long as these two outer rails are powered, everybody else is going to be powered as well, because it's going to carry through these jumpers between the stock rail and the closure rails, stock rails, and the frog rails. So everything is going to be powered. And that was also true on the earlier version as well. They had the same jumpers, bonding jumpers here and here between the stock rails and the closure rails and the frog rails. So that's the same as it was previously. But it's a great feature. It means you do not have to do any soldering to these to install bonding wires between the stock rails and the closure rails, etc. They've done it for you in the design. So that's a great feature. Makes it much more DCC friendly. Now, let's start taking a look at some of the things that they've changed, because those are very important. Now, one thing you'll notice here, the turnout is a little bit shorter at this end, at the point end on the new one. Here, there are 4 ties. On this one, there are 3 ties. Not a big difference unless you're going to be trying to replace one of these with one of these. Then that could be an issue for you. But otherwise, they're pretty much the same in that respect. Another feature here that they have changed is if you look right here where the point rails are connected to the throw bar, the rivets are plainly visible. Whereas on the new version, they've included a plastic insert over that so you don't see it. So it looks much, much more prototypical in that respect. Very nice feature for them to have added. One major change that I really like here, if you look on this older one here, and I'll zoom in a little bit. If you look on the older version right here, the closure rails and the point rails are connected at this point, and they're 2 separate pieces. And there's a rail joiner basically inserted in here that they've used to make this flexible connection. And it worked just fine. But what they've done on the new one is the point and closure rails are one continuous piece. So that is a nice feature. It gives it a much, much more prototypical look, and of course, it flows much better. So it's going to look much nicer on your model railroad. Okay, what else have they done that's cool? Well, if you look at the old version, if you flip the points, you can see that they just move readily. They don't stay in any one position, okay? They would be held in place by whatever mechanism you use in order to throw your points and control them. Could be a tortoise switch machine, could be a DCC Concepts IP digital, it could be any number of things, ground throws, whatever. However, with the new version, they've included the little spring in here. So when you move the points by hand, and I know people that do this on their model railroad, they just click right into place and stay there. So it's very similar to what's been available on a lot of other turnouts in recent years, this click and hold type mechanism. Now, one thing that Walthers does specify, and it's something you need to pay attention to, the little spring is housed under a plastic cover plate right here. And Walthers, in their instructions, do say to remove that spring. You just take a sharp knife, pop this little cover plate off, and remove that spring. Because if you leave that spring in place, it can damage the mechanism of your switch machine. Whatever you're using to control those points is going to be damaged over time. And that goes for the Walthers' own switch machines, as well as Tortoises, IP Digitals, everybody else's that are available could be damaged by that. So be aware of that. But it's fairly easy to do. I've done this on all my Picos, for example, and all my microengineering turnouts. So it's a nice little feature to have, but it's very easy to remove, and it's something you should think about doing. Now, another thing that they do specify in the instructions is when you get ready to install these, they specify that you should remove the end ties at the frog end and also at the point end. And that's just one tie right here. And the reason they say that is that if you insert a rail joiner under here, it's going to be a problem first because they're a cast-on tie plate and the spike head. So in order to get a rail joiner under there, you're going to have to take a knife to it to begin with. And you can, if you want to leave these, you could just undercut them as I showed in the previous video. And I'll put a link to that video right above me here. But you can undercut it using a sharp X-Acto knife, or you can just take and cut through the webbing here, as Walthers indicates, and slide them out. And then they recommend, after you install the turnout, but before you ballast it, that you install a replacement tie for appearance sake under here. And they have wooden ties that they will sell you very conveniently that you can use here as well. You could go ahead and take a sharp knife, carve off the tie plate and the spike head, and then slide this tie right back into place underneath of it. I've done that a lot in the past on my installations. So that's a fairly easy thing to do. Now, of course, the big thing with these is the difference here on powering the frog, because they have done something nice here. Now this is the old frog, and as you can see from looking at the bottom here, there is no way, nothing to attach a wire, a feeder to power this frog. It was up to you to figure out how to do it. And basically, what I've done in the past is solder a feeder wire to the side of the rail opposite the aisle, so it's not visible in place. However, the problem with that is these various rails that make up the frog, they are individual pieces. And if you overheat them when you're soldering on a feeder, it can really cause problems to get that back into shape again. So it was always an issue as far as I was concerned. Now, what they have done here is, just like on the double crossover that I previously showed you in another video, and I'll put a link to that above me here as well, you can see, I'll hold this up real close under my finger, there is a little contact right here. And that contact goes to the frog itself. So you can attach a feeder wire here and power your frog without any problem. So it's identical to what they did on their double crossover, similar to what Pico has been doing with their turnouts, their Electrofrog, and what they're now doing with their Unifrog as well. So this makes it very easy to add power to your frogs, and you can use either the single pole double throw switch that's built in to the tortoise switch machines, the IP Digitals, and of course you could use the mechanism that is built into Walthers' own switch machines to power the frog. So there's a lot of options, and of course there's the old frog juicer that you can use, and the Frog AR that I showed you in a previous video as well. Now another thing that they point out is a lot of folks like to use track nails, and there's only one hole provided here in the design, or in the finished version. But if you look on the back, there's a number of small holes, little pilot holes, provided here, 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 here. There's one right here, one right here. So there's lots of little pilot holes provided. You can then take and drill those out and install your track nails through those holes. So for appearance sake, for a lot of modelers that don't use track nails, they have not left these, they have not run these through. But for people that do like to use track nails, they have provided little pilot holes for you so that you can drill them out and mount your turnouts using those track nails. Now, one of the things that I really was impressed with about the Walthers Turnouts, and also the double crossover that I did a review of previously, is the instruction sheet. They are the clearest instruction sheets for any turnout that I have ever seen. They are just full of details, suggested materials that you might want to purchase to use when you're installing the turnout, as well as detailed instructions on how to do everything that I have just told you. So everything that I've gone over is covered in here as well. So it's a really well thought out, detailed package for you. So now, what's my final assessment? If I were starting over with my layout right now, I would probably use these exclusively instead of the microengineering turnouts, because they offer so many great features. The ability to power the frog without having to add feeders directly to the frog itself. There's that contact right here. All the nice continuous piece of rail here forming both the closure rail and point rails. Really nice, really great features built into these. And one really nice feature, of course, are the size of these spikes here. The spike heads are extremely small, so they're comparable to what you see on a microengineering turnout. So for all of these great features, I would say that right now, these would be my favorite turnout as far as HO Code 83. I can't say for anything else, but if I were going to be building another HO scale model railroad, I would probably exclusively use these new Walthers turnouts. Well, that's a wrap for today's video. I strongly suggest or encourage that you take a look at these new Walthers Turnouts from your dealer. They are just a superb example of what a manufacturer can do if they listen to all of the comments from their customers, because these have greatly improved over the previous version. They're much, much better than just about anything else on the market that I'm aware of. And we'll be taking a look soon at the Pico Unifrog turnout, and they promise to have a lot of features similar to what has been incorporated into these new Walthers turnouts. So keep coming back for more videos from the DCC guy on topics like this and others. In the meantime, have a great weekend, and we'll see you here next week with another video from the DCC guy. Bye now.